Welcome, everybody. I'm so thrilled to see everybody that's here. Well Water Garden was founded by Aberdeen Foundation, which is a foundation that's started by Duke Holmes for the purpose of loving God and loving others by using food access as their platform. It is our desire to empower and equip our neighbors both physically and spiritually in the techniques of gardening God's way. That's what was it? Yeah, and redeeming the dirt, using God's creation and His provision to start their own gardens, not only for their own family, but like Jesus portrays in his life, by generously sharing their abundance with others who are in need. Because I once heard that a blessing isn't a true blessing unless it passes in and through you. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, of course we need, as I was just sharing with Yvonne, food for our families, but what a blessing that is to be able to share that with others. That is our heart, to equip and empower. Through the power of the prayer and God's leading, the Well Water Garden has taken great strides and seen much fruit. But as with any startup, we knew that there would be a steep learning curve. I claim John 15:5b. Jesus said, "Apart from me, you can do nothing." That's one of my favorite scriptures. Because everything that has happened, it's because of His doing. Of course, He uses us, but it's because of Him. We couldn't do it without Him. And I have seen this lived out the last year and a half. One of the sweetest accomplishments I've witnessed is how God has masterfully provided our leadership team. It's been so awesome to see everybody come together. Well Water Garden's mission is a reflection of Aberdeen's heart, which is radically loving our team, clients, and community with their actions. And I'm going to share a little bit about how the Well Water Garden actually started. I was on a prayer newsletter that I would receive every month. And June of last year, it was like a full page of prayers. At the very bottom, this gentleman said, "I strongly believe there's going to be a big disruption in the food supply in the fall of 2021. He's like, for anyone who is wanting to hear how you can create gardens with loving God and loving others, let me know and I'll send you the PDF." I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was praying for. So the handbook that Ethan's going to be handing out is it's from a gentleman from Zimbabwe, which Ethan will be sharing a little bit more about. His name is Brian Oldreeve. That PDF was written by a gentleman called Noah Sanders. And I'll give a little bit of history on Noah, and then Ethan, we're going to tag him. He's going to share about Brian. But Noah, this PDF was written by Noah, but Noah had written a paper, I think it was a dissertation paper, whatever kind of paper it was. He went to Google University, and he typed in his two passions, which was discipleship and gardening. And up came Brian Oldreeve's name, and he's from Zimbabwe. So Noah got on a plane and went to Zimbabwe and was trained under Brian, which he has two videos that we would love to share with you. It's captivating. It is captivating. But anyway, when Noah came back to the States, I believe it was last year, but he started Well Water Garden. And it's just an outreach of doing farming God's way. And Brian's story is incredible. So anyway, I'll tag team and let you finish with Brian's story. Yeah.
Awesome. So Marsha last year had sent me these two messages from Brian. And so he started this ministry like back in the day, Rhodesia days. Does anybody know Rhodesia, that country? So he was an English descent farmer down there. And so very industrialized farming he was a part of. He actually started off as a tobacco farmer. And then we grew a lot of tobacco and had all the setup for it. And then during the Bush War, there was this local minister, this English guy came to them and then ended up convicting him and his wife. And they had been going to a church, but then they weren't truly walking with God. So they gave that up, started walking with God. And then a couple months later, driving down the street, his little daughter was like, "Dad, if you're so against us smoking, why do you grow so much tobacco?" And he was like, "Well, honey, it's what I got it set up for." And he was like, "Yeah, I gave a really bad excuse. Like, I was really pushing it off." And so he said that like laid right on my heart. And then several months later, I woke up and I told my wife, I said, "I've been convicted by God to never grow another weed of tobacco again." And he was like, with being, a wife that's like thinking of provision of the family, I thought she would have been like, "What are you talking about? Like, we've done this for like our whole life." And she was like, "Perfect, we're growing vegetables." And he was like, "Okay." So they went and started growing vegetables, and then for the next couple of years, failed miserably. Couldn't grow anything because they were still growing in an industrialized way. So he lost his farm, he lost everything. And so him and his family, they went to work for another local English descent Rhodesian or Zimbabwean, I think by now. But, and so they went to work there, and the farm was slowly failing all the time. They're having to till more and more. They were having to put more and more fertilizer on and everything. So he's just watching this all, and he's like, okay, we're losing money on this farm. Like getting that sinking feeling in his stomach again, like this isn't good. And so one day he's out walking in nature. And he said he didn't realize this was the stop pattern until then. But he's looking around in nature, and he's like, wait, how's the Lord growing things around me efficiently? And so just watching like inside the forest or inside the kind of the prairie landscape, he's watching this constant mulch that's being put on the soil. And so the plants that come through and spring through that mulch aren't in this competition with these weeds all the time. Where are these weeds coming from and everything? So he's watching that, and then began to kind of develop a method in his head. He was like, for our vegetable gardens, instead of doing all this massive tilling and everything, we should try a mulch layer of whatever's available around us. And it was straw. And so he went and he tried that. He took like 1 little hectare, which is like 2 acres, I think, and started doing that method, calling it, he didn't call it back then, but God's way, or just the way he was like, I don't know if this is God's way, maybe it's just all over my head. And so he went and he tried it on 1 hectare, and it like yielded like twice as much as the veg in the conventional farms around him. And then so each year just got a little bigger, and next thing you know, the like whole 200 hectare farm was like using all of this method. And so it's just like really cool how he went out in nature and saw it. And so we'll talk a little bit more about like the huge benefits of a mulch. And most of the time the mulch is like free around you. You know, like you're mowing up weeds, it's like mulch. Doing that, mulch. So it's like, it's all over. So yeah, he like developed that way. And then so the area he was in Zimbabwe, there was a huge disparity of skills between all the white colonialists and then the local native Zimbabweans. And so a lot of them were subsistent farmers. You know, they had whatever they grew is what they subsided on. I think that's proper English. And so he would go around, and they would just have these very sickly little plots of land, barely getting what they needed out of it to provide for his family. And so he went and he tried to go and teach them this method. But what he noticed a lot of the time, it wasn't a lack of knowledge. It was a lack of motivation and like fear of God. Because like he even helped these one people start their plot, and he came back several months later, and it was all grown over and disgusting. He was like, guys, what happened? It's like, I taught you this all. And of course, local neighbors that were jealous had a witch doctor curse the field so that they couldn't walk back on it again. So it's like, that's how dark it is in those areas. It's not a resource issue. If anybody ever tells you something is a resource issue because of why people aren't doing well, like, no. There's resources out there. It's do people fear God, because He will provide all the resources you need. The earth is so abundant, and so that's never the issue. And it's just making sure people's spirits are in the right place. And so yeah, so then he started the Foundations for Farming, years of failure again of trying to connect with people, and then God teaching him the way to genuinely connect with people, and then ended up kind of blowing up after that. And so he would just tell people, get them started on a little plot, a little subsistence plot for enough maize for their family, and would teach them how and kind of mentor them along the way, and then bring the spiritual aspect into it. Because, you know, a lot of the time in life you want to put something in a box. Like, I'm going to teach someone about garden. And it's like, a lot of the time, like, you're going to go out, and if you're going to be relational about it, all the other elements of life are going to come up. How's that person doing that day? Where's their spirit at? What's their knowledge in that? Maybe they have an experience to bring. You're not there to know everything. And I know with the gardening, with you guys, a lot of you guys' experience, I'm still kind of a pup at it. You know? But yeah, so that's kind of his story. And then like Marcia was talking about Noah learning about him, and then going over and doing an internship with him, and then bringing that back to where Noah lives in Alabama, and getting started on teaching that method to people. And so it's like, you know, with gardening, there's such a scope to ways and methods you can do it, to where it can like almost be slightly overwhelming at times. So the thing I love about this method they teach is it's just a simple 20 by 20 plot, and using mounded beds to help with the water retention, and then mulching, and then keeping your vegetables pretty simple to start. And then of course, once people get into it and everything, your own creativity, your own mind, where to get your soil, a food for the soil, where to get your mulch from. There's like so much creativity you can put into it. But sometimes creativity is overwhelming. Someone's like, you can be so creative with that. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm a little nervous now. Like, this is a little much. So Yeah, finding that balance of starting out in a simple way. And so after the years of teaching people, Brian came up with the 4 concepts of like principles to abide by when you're putting in the garden. And so the first one is being on time. Second one, doing everything to a high standard. Minimal waste, and then doing it with joy are his principles. And so within the gardening, it's funny because you can know all the techniques about gardening. You could be a master in that. But if you don't have the right mindset and the right spirit going into it, that'll determine what it ends up looking like in the physical and what you end up being able to do with the garden space. So, and what a cool opportunity too, because you could go and teaching the techniques of gardening, there's so many opportunities to talk about the gospel and the way the Lord works. But then when you go and actually start teaching like principles of how to tend something, how to take care of something, like it opens up even more your opportunities to share about, the Lord is like, we all need tending. We're like, if we're not taken care of, if we don't take care of ourselves through God's way, He taught us, and allow Him to take care of us, we become that weedy garden that's super unproductive. And so like, just that alone, like, and then all the parables of Jesus within gardening that are so poignant. But so yes, that's a little introduction to everything and to how it got started. And so today what we're going to be talking about specifically is getting a plan for our gardens. And so kind of like talking about what we want to plant, what we're going to eat, what will people be eating. And so like that way you can go amongst your own families or your own churches, your own groups, and be like, guys, what do you want to eat? What would you enjoy? And then just kind of getting a scope on how many people you have available to potentially volunteer. Because it's like it might be just a couple people to start, maybe have very minimal gardening experience, or maybe like a small crowd of people, and you got people that have been doing it twice as long as I've been alive. You're going to have that scope, so kind of determining that. So yeah, before we get into the actual gardening planning part, like planning out your plot, kind of like I talked about already, saying, what do we want to eat? Like, also, what are some herbs we could use? What are culinary herbs I love that may be potentially easy to grow? What would be some medicinal herbs, maybe too, if you're more, I like medicinal herbs, and we'll use like a lot of peppermints for like if I have a headache or anything like that. And there's so many different types of herbs you can use. I like to do a lot of foraging for herbs too, and maybe we could do a class on that later in the year too, wild foraging. But yeah, and then so determining what amount of volunteers you have within your group or within your area, or potential volunteers you could reach out to in your area. Like, I know these people would be interested in coming, being a part of the install of the garden. Maybe if we get some food, had some snacks out, or something like that. So kind of thinking ahead on what resources you have available. And then determining how much volume you'd want to do. Because like with the 20 by 20 plot, like that's a good amount to start if you have like, 3 or 4 volunteers and someone that can kind of be checking in on it regularly that's nearby. But like say you end up having like 30, 40 volunteers that want to be involved potentially doing 2 or 3 plots in the year. Or just starting small, even if you have that many volunteers, kind of up to you. Like we've been talking out within the ministry, like we kind of, hey Renee, we kind of recommend starting small and then kind of growing from there to just get the manageable techniques and everything going. And another thing, what food for your soil do you have around? Because just like your stomach, the soil around you has bacteria and it has fungus. Hopefully you have fungus in your stomach, and it's constantly eating. Anything you throw on it, it'll eat it up. Obviously, turn it back to dirt.
If you guys have volunteers that want to come jump in on your gardens and you guys coordinate that, that's wonderful. But if you end up having like volunteers that maybe aren't close to your garden or that want to jump in but that you have enough people already, we have Marla is in charge of all the volunteers and keeping a compendium of the names and everything and connecting them with their local spot. So just to let you know that for thinking ahead. But yeah, I'm just going to go over quickly how to connect and to connect with us on getting the right resources and who to talk to for certain things and like that. So to go over that. And I sent an email to you guys in January and it was a little bit long-winded. I'm like, I want to be detailed and usually brevity is not one of my skill sets. I'm like, wow, that's really long-winded. Yeah, it's true. It's very true. So I just want to do a quick recap on some of the details I had shared in that email for the introduction. So I wrote this: our goal as the ministry team is to offer a structure, support for your garden site and resources, volunteers, prayers, education, and so on. we will send you the contacts of the leadership team so that you can accurately contact who you need to. So like if you got like a gardening question for this, be like, just give me a call. Or if you got this question for a volunteer, you can just email Marla or give her a call. That way it just makes it to where you can be, pretty accurate with your communications in that. Or you got someone that's like, I want to do this next year, like who to contact in that regard. So yeah, so that's kind of like what we're wanting to offer, and offering resources like this, the manuals, the planting guides, and so yeah. And then on your guys' part, the consistency to the mission of Well-Watered Gardens. And so I'm going to share the mission and vision statement and everything like that real quick. Awesome. Sweet. So Well-Watered Gardens of Johnson County. So our mission, oh, that's really tiny. How do you become bigger? I'm not a tech guy, I don't know help. Okay, it's really tinily. Mission, helping to alleviate hunger in Johnson County and their surrounding neighbors by bringing hope and transformation to individuals and communities through teaching faithful stewardship of the land. Because there's a lot of farming going on in an area. And the sad thing is that doesn't equate to food a lot of the time. And it doesn't equate to nutrient-dense food. So you think like, we live in America. We've got food. We're very prosperous. Like a lot of people in Johnson County, they can't even access like nutrient-dense food easily or know how to use it or anything like that. So just like I was talking about, like it's not normally a resource issue. It's normally a mental and a spiritual issue. And so with us being called by God to, pioneer, like a garden means to guard a space. And I say people let down their guard and stopped gardening for, skipped a couple of generations. But like, let's reinvigorate this. This is like, if you have land, it's like foolhardy to not use your land to grow the food you need and to be a generous person. And so like getting back to that, and that nutrient-dense food, because me and Megan, it's funny, we'll start like nerding out on nutrition stuff at some of our meetings because we're both like avid nutrition people where we just like watch endless YouTube videos about nutrition. And but it's just like a little bit of those little bit of pieces you can share with someone that like adds so much value to their life because they feel good. And it's like if someone's feeling kind of nasty all the time, I'm on these processed foods, like what better way to be like we're sharing the abundant life of Christ with you, and here's this to make you feel abundant instead of just this kind of slogging along in life because of being, okay, that was a tangent, I'm sorry. Next, vision. Multiplying simple, sustainable vegetable gardens through communities by personally modeling and investing in faithful leaders. So that's what I love about our model. It's like we have people that want resources, we have people that want to grow gardens. We put them together. If you know people that want to do this, like let us know, and we'll see where it goes like that. Leave it up to the Lord on how it wants to grow. So our values: love, humility, faithfulness, and generosity. And then our essence: Well-Watered Gardens Project is a heart-based Christian gardening program started by redeeming the dirt and foundations for farming, designed to help people feed themselves and others while experiencing the transforming power of Jesus. Awesome. And then our main verse where we get the Well-Watered Gardens, Isaiah 58:10 through 11. Oh, it's such a good chapter. If you read Isaiah, sorry, that's another tangent. It's like kind of depressing most of the way through, and you get to like the last 10 chapters, and it's like, if you like sit in the sad, like prophetic, like this is going to get destroyed part of it, you get to the end and you're just like, oh, this is amazing. And so this is like one of my favorite chapters. It's like, you feed the hungry, you take care of these people like I've called you to, and stop worrying about making sure to have all your little ceremonies just so and just right, make sure you fasted these days and everything like that. He's like, then I'll take care of you. But this self-focused, worship of your own religion instead of worship of me. And religion, the word just means to be connected to something. So it's like your religion, he says that, your religion. It's like your religion should be being connected to me. And so connecting people through that and showing them what it's like to have the master gardener in your life. So being on time, at standard, without wastage, and with joy. And then so to talk about just a little bit more, so on your guys' garden sites, teaching those different principles to people that get to come on the garden site and work alongside you is a big part of it. And Noah wrote out the goal, Noah Sanders, to have 1 million well-watered gardens around the world in the next 10 years. So we'll see what we can do. we're increasing from 2 to maybe like 6 or 7 this year. So it's a pretty good leap. We'll see. And yeah, so I said this earlier, but recommend having the handbook and reading through it, even if you are an experienced gardener, because of the different spiritual applications that are throughout the manual, even if you just read that part at the end of it. But yeah, creativity and how to use the space, how to draw people into it. Like, take time to prayer walk your space and just open up and see how the Lord can use that space, who to reach out to, who not to, who to wait on, who to give to. And you know, with these gardens, especially their home or your church, like, you guys should be eating from this and getting produce from it. And then, you know, deciding the people around you and praying and meditating on who the Lord wants you to reach out to. You know, probably preferring those that are in need first, and maybe not a pantry yet, but like an individual connection you can make with someone being kind of your priority, because that can be more of that heart-to-heart connection, and then moving out and expanding from there. Awesome. So on each garden site, we encourage there to be 3 roles, well, I guess 2 roles and then a catch-all role, of having a farm manager, which is the person that kind of takes over the responsibility of just overseeing to make sure that the garden planning and the setup and the maintenance is being done. And so having that, and then having a garden coordinator, which can kind of be like the admin person. Because I know, like, trying to do both the technical, working out their part, and the admin of connecting people. Like, some people are like admin pros and other people are boots on the ground pros, like for the actual gardening portion of that. So kind of finding your skill sets within the group. And then your volunteers, all the volunteers, and like recommend, like, someone's talking about flowers all the time or something, be like, come on out, help me like design this part of that. Like, what skill set do you have to bring? Like, this person's really into herbal medicine. Like, what herbs can we plant alongside all this? We got that little nook of space. Like, let's use it. And yeah, just finding those pieces of it. Someone might just be come out to prayer, walk the garden, and spend time in it. Like, wonderful. Yeah. So a little detail on we're about to have some lunch. Our next garden class. It's kind of nice how the dates lined up for March, the same as February, the 26th of March. And at this next class, we're going to be talking about the details of installing your garden, everything to have together. And then if you're a seed saver at all, bring some seeds to share. I got some flower seeds to share and a couple other. And so maybe as like the years progress, we'll end up like barely needing to buy seeds, which would be awesome. You know, because when you get a good vegetable, it's so crazy productive with seeds that, you know, if you're smart about it, you can pretty much eliminate the need of buying seeds. And then expect invites coming up too to some more of these workshops, some prayer and praise times. And then maybe even next month for that meeting, we could actually have it out on a garden site and do an install together. Just everybody there, just put together one garden, get the soil laid out. And and one more thing, on the layout of the garden, I did the equation for like how much soil and how much mulch to need for the garden, so I can send that in the follow-up email of the yards. Yeah, about like 7 cubic yards of the composted soil if you do 8-inch by 42-inch by 20-foot beds, and then about like 3 cubic yards of the triple milled mulch to go through and layer everything with about 3-4 inches with a little extra. So sweet. So that is pretty much it, guys.